yourselves, and this is the Burning Man Podcast. And welcome to my podcast. What I'd like to say is this episode is a reflection of the last year and a half for me to be specific, and what it's meant for me mentally, emotionally, and just in life in general. It's been a tough year, I would say, the last year, but the last 18 months I've grown a lot as a person, but I feel like I've got it together. So let me just start at the beginning and we'll go from there. For me, the last 18 months or since last April have been very enlightening, interesting, challenging, sometimes devastating, and also full of growth and potential. I got COVID last year, and thankfully I had a asymptomatic um, experience. My only tough parts were the lack of smell, lack of taste that lasted, it seemed like 3 weeks. I had a different career at that time. It's my side hustle now, but I was an over the road truck driver, and I worked for a company running um, very expensive wines and spirits from California to Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and beyond. And the company had no plan. The company, there, as a philosophy, it seemed like everybody who caught it at this company, from the warehouse workers on down, they pretty much left out to dry. I didn't dig that, but you know, companies are companies, so you can always expect them to act in their own self-interest. So for me, when I got it, it really had me think of what could happen. I was already very aware of everything going on with the COVID situation, and I found myself increasingly weirded out, is the best way to say it. Sometimes in trucking, we have what's known as a backhaul. Coming back, I might take something different out to California than I brought back. But our main business was the high-end wines and spirits. And some of the things that we took back were food products. So what really started weirding me out was one run, the last run that just did it for me. I went to a food distribution center, who I won't name, in California, and they wanted to stick me in a cage with a bunch of drivers, almost standing room only, while they unloaded our trucks, rather than have us outside where we were safer. And I was wearing a mask by then, and I refused. And they basically told me I had no choice. So I said, I've always got a choice. So I said, I'm leaving. You can unhook me from your dock, and that's it. So they did a huddle, and they got together and decided that they would unload me anyway, even though I didn't want to go along with the program. And I told some of those other guys, which we're talking various stages of hygiene, just a bad all-around situation. I told some of those other guys, man, you don't have to put up with that. Just leave. So I went back out to my truck. A couple other guys did too, and I sat there, waited, unloaded. Then I went and I talked to my boss, and I relayed what I said to him, because I didn't want him to have any misconception. You know, I'm not going to be a sucker just to haul some freight. You know, trucking jobs are in high demand right now. It's a skilled profession, and good drivers like myself, who have a lot of miles and no accidents, no tickets, can pass an inspection and know what we're doing, can make money. So I went back to the terminal and reloaded up, and that's when at some point in that exchange, I believe is when I was infected. Probably with the driver who brought my trailer to me on our alternate lot, where they would have us sit on the alternate lot while they loaded. But he had no mask. He was coughing a little bit. I tried to stay away from him, but I guess I still was in too close a proximity. So thankfully, I was asymptomatic. But we have a terminal in Texas. So after I finished my load, I just took my truck over to the terminal and I unloaded my stuff into my car and I went home. And pretty much I decided that was it, because while I was en route to Texas, the company sent out an email, the second email they sent out, that was asking truckers to take a pay cut. No way I'm taking a pay cut, because I'm away from home for 8 straight days, trapped in a truck, because I'm responsible for that freight. It's high dollar freight. So I take my job serious. So other than a shower, to get something to eat, use the restroom, walk around for a little bit, try to get some exercise, that's basically it. I'm in the truck for 168 hours out of 168 hours in a week. I think that's correct. I hope my math is correct. So anyway, I just decided that this is insane, if for no other reason than with the company I was working for, because of the lack of support. And they had no plan, and I was asking, what's the plan if someone catches COVID on the road? They had none. They just said, what do you mean, what plan? So not good at all. So anyway, I decided that was it for me, loaded up, went home, but I digress. I skipped ahead a little bit. En route, they asked us to take a pay cut, a temporary pay cut, which can't do it. It's already, I have to go, coming out of California, I have to go over mountains and control a full 80,000 pound vehicle, not hit anything, drive through multiple states, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, and get the freight there on time and safely. I'm not taking a pay cut. The pay cut is that I stay in that truck all week. For me, at that point in my career, I wanted to be home every weekend, period. Because a job is what you do to live. It's not your life. And I haven't romanticized the trucking lifestyle to where I'm a truck driver, and I have to just say, yeah, I'm a truck driver. No, I'm a professional driver, and I drive a truck, and I do a good job at it. So that's how I look at it. I keep it in perspective with the rest of my life. It provides a comfortable living so that I can do things. But if I work all the time, how can I enjoy it? Doesn't matter how much money you make if you never get to enjoy it. And I try to impress that on young drivers when I meet them, or just guys that I know that are driving. I know a lot of truck drivers, and I always try to impress that upon them. So anyway, they offered us either the pay cut or to be laid off. So I took the layoff. It was going to be, I had some money saved, and it would be a little bit of a challenge, but I was willing to do it until I figured out my next step. So I went home, and driving in a truck is hard on your body sometimes, even with exercise. All you're doing is sitting all day. It's stressful. I think that a trucker makes 180 decisions in a minute, every minute in a truck, that affect lives. I mean, we're talking about an 80,000 pound guided missile that can hit any vehicle it hits or anything it hits at 217 times its weight. That's the physics of it. So you have to be very, very deliberate in driving. I don't want anybody's death on my conscience. So I am a very conscientious driver anyway. I always have been. And I consider it my mission not to kill anybody. So it's very stressful. I ballooned up to 278 or so wasn't feeling that great, wasn't looking that great. I didn't think, you know. So I decided I was going to go home, get myself together. That was the first stage of the plan. Just start working on my health, try to get that under control, try to start eating right, try to start more free thinking about some of the direction that I wanted to take. It was a good thing. During that time, the first couple of months, um, I took up guitar again after maybe a 10-year pause. And mostly my pause was because of my hands would hurt a lot. So I took up acoustic guitar again. I started racing in a online racing league and spent some money on like a simulator. I'm talking about the seat with the hydraulics and the steering wheel and everything. Bought a lot of fishing gear to go fishing, you know, since it's a solitary thing, you can do it by yourself. Um, and basically thought about a lot of things I wanted to change and how I was going to go about doing that. So that's what I did. And it was working out pretty well for me. So for me, it was working out pretty well. I lost about 25 pounds within a month and a half. So while all this was going on, my life mate of 20 something years um, was up in Michigan trying to help resolve a family matter and took a pretty serious fall in a potholed parking lot, tore a rotator cuff, and injured a hip that was already borderline and was eventually going to need to be replaced. And she was 63 at the time. So it was a pretty serious matter. And, you know, it just required, it added a different, complexion or complication to what was going on, where now she had this health crisis going on and she was refusing to, she didn't feel like in her circumstance and the circumstance of the young man that she was trying to help out, that she could take time off that would be required for the surgery. And you know, I supported her in what she was trying to do, even though I definitely didn't want her to be there, and I had strong opinions about the whole situation. But I supported her, and eventually she kept working, and it got to the point where she started walking with a cane, but she was stubborn and just wouldn't relent. Then she was using one of those walkers that you could sit on and move around with the handbrake, and then eventually a wheelchair, and finally she had to quit in December. So November of 2019, and she had to schedule her appointment, and it was scheduled for January. But when that came around, because of complications with edema, she had to put it off. And I didn't think anything of it, but you know, I understood. So she went through the process of getting her edema under control and the swelling down in her legs. And they did the surgery, and it was successful, but they had a hard time waking her up from anesthesia. So when I talked to her next, was a couple of days afterwards, and you know, she had physical therapists coming to the house regularly to get her up and moving around, and another occupational therapist working on her hand and motor skills. And she was almost moving around by herself, and then within 4 more days she was moving around by herself. So she was progressing pretty nicely at first. And what they had suggested was for her to move into assisted living so that they could give her more intensive uh, therapy to help recover. But this was right when the nursing homes were ground zero for COVID. So she was just not receptive to that at all. And it was her decision to make, so I had to go along with it. And I wasn't there. But the young man that she was taking care of swore up and down he could take care of her and that they would be fine. But we were basically living apart, still very much in love with each other, or loved each other, if not in love with each other, but very much connected, strongly, spoke every day, or usually every day, communicated our thoughts, our hopes, our dreams. And one of our dreams was to finish that situation up so she could get back home to Texas. And at first, after her surgery, when I would talk to her, she just sounded like she was sedated. So I didn't really think a lot of it. You know, I just chalked it up to the medication that she was on because, you know, it's kind of painful. So, like I said, I didn't think very much of it. As things wore on, you know, that continued to be a theme. But still, it didn't really register with me. You know, I thought, this is Deb. There's nothing wrong with her. That was her name, Debra. So I just chalked it up to, you know, the surgery. And, you know, after you have that surgery, the physical therapists like to get you up and moving around a lot and working on your motor skills. And they were at first, and they got her up and around, and though it was painful, and you know, she was never one to handle a lot of pain, so you know, there was a lot of complaining, and I listened to it, and I understood what it was, but she was improving, you know, even with that. And I would just try to get her focused on that, positive. Just focus on that just think how you were 3 months ago, not walking, and now you're up and moving around, which is all progress. She was up and walking within a week, so I felt like prospects were good. And her decision, you know, was as soon as she got up and got healed, probably midsummer, she was going to move. That was our plan. So I was down here doing my thing in isolation, you know, solo, alone. And, you know, she had all that going on. Well, the kid, after her surgery, said he would take care of her and didn't. The long story short. So it all came to a head in, I guess, early May. She called me one morning frantic. You know, we've been IMing and talking about the situation, so I was kind of apprised on what was going on, and I wasn't happy with it, but we both were, I think we were on the same page, thinking that we could just ride it out and be done with it, you know, and then there'd be nothing to look back on because it would end badly as it began. But I got a frantic call from her one morning, and she was stuck in bed and couldn't get up. And she was yelling for the kid, but he was asleep, passed out, whatever you want to say, on the couch in the front room, less than 25 feet away from her. And I mean, she was talking pretty loud in the phone, so it's no way, can't say that she wasn't able to talk loud, because she was. So I felt completely helpless to hear her distressed like that. You know, we're talking about 10 a.m. in the morning, approximately, and she just is, you know, she's hysterical. She can't move, and she needs to move because she's in pain, and she keeps hollering, and he won't answer. So we agree that I'll try to get in touch with her niece, who's a heavy drinker. So I reach out on Facebook and make a call through IM to her, and finally I get in touch with her, and she's incoherent. And at first, she can't even understand what I'm saying. But I'm telling her, I'm like, Deborah needs you to get over to the house now because she's stuck. And she's like, what do you mean she's stuck? The kid's over there. He's there. And I'm like, he's not helping her. So she swears she'll get up and head right over there. Well, an hour later, she gets over there. And so Deborah calls me back and tells me, play by play what happened, that she finally got over there and woke the kid up and he helped her get up. So that was just the beginning of it, and after that I made the decision that I needed to take a more active role in that. I thought about it for, a little bit, and my heart was just telling me I needed to be there for her. So that evening I called her and I told her my plan. Listen, I'm going to come up there next week and I'm going to spend a couple weeks with you and help you get back on your feet. And by then, the one thing that the reason she was not progressing again was the kid said he was overwhelmed, and he's 17, 6 to 18, whatever. But he was so overwhelmed that the one thing she made him promise not to do was the thing he wanted to do, which is take her over to the niece's house, the one that was the drunk, and leave her over there. He left her over there for a week, and after that week, she was totally different. She told me that she had had a couple setbacks, and come to find out, they just stuck her in a back room and ignored her, ignored her cries and everything for the most part. And instead of checking on her every hour or whatever to make sure she was okay, they were only doing it 2 or 3 times a day. They would just leave her back there to suffer. So she went backwards instead of forward, and she wasn't able to walk anymore, and I guess somewhere in there they stopped with letting the physical therapist have access to her, stopped letting the occupational therapist have access to her, because she was excited and frustrated at the same time by all that, because she knew she was getting better. And the occupational therapist had her taking marbles and moving marbles with her hand that was her shoulder, that the arm that was messed up with the shoulder fall. And though it was painful to her, she had a lot of hope, and I could hear it in her voice. But after she came back from over there, it was just totally different. So the next week I get up there, and when I get there, I'm so excited to see her, and we're excited we see each other, and I spend a little bit of time with her just talking, because we're in mixed company and we can't really talk freely, too many ears around, so to speak. But the kid was getting ready to head out and go take some time off because he needed some time away. So when he leaves, she proceeds to tell me a lot of what's going on and just filled me in that there's some abuse going on and things. And I didn't like it at all. She had 5 family members that lived within 5 minutes, including the kid who lived with her. And they were all dropping the ball. They all are struggling with substance abuse and other issues. So, to make a long story short, May, I started going up there, and I went up there and stayed for 10 days. The house was just demolished, a mess. This kid, rather than sleep in his own bed, was sleeping on her couch, had soiled and destroyed the couch, food packages everywhere, pizza boxes, you name it, all over the place, bottles. So he decides, with encouragement, to go ahead and take off for a couple days because he was so stressed out by everything. He needed a break. And I just took over for 2 weeks and stayed there. And she and I came up with a plan. Now, this plan began before I got there because she was giving me the play by play about the neglect. And my situation was that I was living on a third floor. So, under normal circumstance, I would have said, just come on, we'll work it out. But I lived on the third floor, and I thought we really had enough time to work everything out. So I go up there, and she needs to get up. She's at the point now where she's using a walker. She can support herself, but she can't move around on her own. She needs assistance. So she's regressed tremendously. And I didn't catch everything. I knew there were things she wasn't telling me about her health, but I love her, and I just wanted to really, honestly, from that day forward, just wanted to get her out of that situation. So, towards the end of the 2 weeks, after saying to myself, there's no way I'm going to pick up after this kid. I mean, the kitchen, every dish in the kitchen is in the sink, piled up, a mountain full of nasty dishes. Every room is filthy. I cleared out her room and got it where, for her sake, the hygiene was to the point where she could live there and, have some chance at rehabilitation. Because as things were going, her chance of rehabilitation in that situation were slim to none. And I mean, we're talking about, you got 5 able-bodied adults within 5 minutes that can't get the job done. So for me, it was already in my head that I'm just going to move her. And we talked about it and agreed that that was going to be the plan. Because she felt like she was going to die if she stayed there. And the hospital had tried to encourage her to go into assisted living, but it was COVID time, so she did not want to go in there. She rightly so thought that she would get, she wouldn't come out. She'd get COVID and die in there in that circumstance. So I understood, but if anything, her faith in the people around her was misplaced because they were not up to the task. I mean, if you have someone who's recuperating, you're taking care of them, you work around the schedule that they need. I didn't know how bad it was till I got up there. They neglected her physical therapy and occupational therapy after a few sessions. It was too much for him to get up and open the door. And of course, because the house was filthy, he didn't want anybody in there to see the condition she was living in. So he ignored so many appointments and didn't reschedule them. And they cut her off. I mean, she was fully insured for all this stuff. They just, because she stopped, participating, they moved on, and rightly so. I mean, they wouldn't answer for the social worker, for nobody. They just hide in there, I guess. So I didn't find this out till I started making phone calls up there. But anyway, the situation was pretty bad, and I tried to respect her wishes. She had some attachment to this kid, and she didn't want him to get in trouble because I wanted to call the law. It's elder abuse, pure and simple, because she's 64. So when I finally go to clean up, I wasn't going to do it, but it was for her, So I clean up. There's piss bottles up under the 2-liter piss bottles up under the couch. There are pizza boxes sandwiched up under the cushions. And this was a nice little sectional she had at one time. And of course, she couldn't come out there to see what condition all this stuff was in. So it was just there, and I didn't even want to share it with her. There was no point. She knew on some level how bad it was, but it didn't need it in her face. And she had a little dog, that she loved that was over at her niece's house, who's the functional alcoholic or non-functional alcoholic, and they wouldn't bring the dog back over there for her to at least see for the day. And that's all she wanted to do was just see her dog. So when I was getting ready to leave after 2 weeks, I had my own things to take care of, my own affairs to take care of. I had to go, and more importantly, I had to go to see if I could facilitate this apartment move as fast as possible. So I get back home, and I had the house totally cleaned, everything, all dishes done, everything, top to bottom, except for that nasty room this kid had. But the living room, the kitchen, the hallways, the bathroom, the laundry room, her room, everything done, man. I left food there, healthy food for her, protein infused food like Ensure, so that she would get her vitamins and nutrients every day so that she could recover. So 2 weeks after that, I go home for 2 weeks and I come back, and the place is just a disaster. I can't even get in the front door. That's how much junk is in there this time. So I had to force my way in the door. I'm furious. But anyway, I'll skip ahead in the story. That more of the same with that. But I couldn't move until September 1st. That because the place I live next to the largest military reservation in the country, and it was just the timing. There was no place for me to move, so I was stuck and couldn't even get her up the stairs at that point, even if I wanted to. So I just kept going every couple of weeks, and her condition was getting worse and worse and worse, which I didn't understand, even intellectually, though emotionally, I understood it all, that I just needed to get her out of there. And I thought if I just got her out of there and get her down here, everything could be worked out. We could get her back in rehab, get her on her insurance was canceled, get her more insurance through the government, and just get things stabilized. And then, like I told her, whatever your life looks like beyond this, we'll work it out. And I'm in it. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm not a fair weather person at all. And I knew it meant 24/7 constant care, but I wasn't going to leave her because I know she wouldn't do that to me. So finally, September comes along, or August, the end of August comes along. I go up there with a cousin, and we bring a pickup truck, crew cab, to grab as much of her stuff as we can, put the rest in storage, and take her back, And that's what I did. The day we left, all of the family, they were all concerned about her. They come over there and try to block us in and tell us we can't take her. And they were sure it was me that put her up to it, that made the decision for her to leave, which it wasn't. It was a mutual decision that two grown adults made. So they blocked us in, just called the police. I said, the police are going to tell you to just get out of the way because it's her will, and she could speak at that point, barely, but she was legible, she couldn't speak strongly, but she could speak and you could understand her. But it was deteriorating. I mean, she went from being able to have a full-blown conversation to, at that point, after 6 visits, going home and coming back, she was only able to speak in small segments. So her condition was getting worse, but my thinking was it was just moving location. So, of course, predictably, the police come over there and they talk to her. 3 of them talked to her, and each one asked her the same question. Are you leaving of your own will? Of course she was. And of course she said yes. So they told them, you got to get out of the way or you're going to jail. So we leave, emptied out her house, put most in storage, everything that would fit in the back of the pickup truck we took. And they were more concerned about her big screen TV that they bought than her. And they wanted that TV, so I took it off of the truck and gave it to them. Said, "Here, take it. I have one." But this is the kind of people that we were dealing with. I said that for context, so you know what kind of people we're dealing with. They're more concerned with a Walmart TV than they are with her. That was their main thing. Get that, we want our TV. And she was secondary. But we get down here, and I had started moving before I left, so we were in a state of moving in at that point. But it was a little bit of chaos, but we worked it out. And she had talked me into getting a dog, probably 2 weeks before I got up there, which was in her way. I think she knew that I needed something, and she wanted to make sure that I wasn't alone. And you would have to know her to know the truth of that. But she was an amazing person, and none of us are perfect, but she was perfect for me. So, and I only say that, because life is complicated, and we're complicated, multi-dimensional human beings. So, life is not, it doesn't fit it always into a cracker box or whatever. So we get down here, and things are going pretty good. So she and I are just, making the best of the situation. I'm feeding her better. She's getting to go outside. I wheel her outside. She's wheelchair bound by this point too, by the way. She can't even get up on her own at this point. I can pick her up and hold her up, but she can't grip the walker by the time we leave or nothing. So I made sure she got outside, and she had fresh air and sunlight and beautiful things to see, like flowers and whatnot growing, and just expanded her life 500% from what it was, because she was just trapped in a room in a chair. Literally, a room in a chair. That's how bad it was. So we were past that. We bought another chair, but it's one of those two-way chairs with the lift in it that would help her to stand. And I bought some gear to try to help her with rehab, which we never got to that point. Physical therapy gear, so it would help her. So we get to go into the doctor and things. I find out she's got a hardened heart. The doctor realizes that she's had a couple of strokes along the way, more probably induced by stress of the whole situation up there, and being ignored for, this kid sleeps all day and gets up about 2 or 3 to tend to her, instead of, getting up in the morning, keeping her on a regular schedule and worrying about her health. He's worried about himself and partying at nighttime and whatnot. So, bad situation. So we get that a little stabilized, but I think at that point the damage was done, and all we could do was go from there. And we were going to doctor's appointments and seeing specialists and whatnot, but there was really no path back to her having just a totally normal life. So once again, on several occasions, I just told her that we're going to just make the best of this that we can, and we're just going to get on with it, get on with living. But I hadn't been working this whole time, and she wasn't working, so we were both living off of what we had. I didn't miss truck driving, but along the way I started, in the few hours that I would have to myself, spread out during the day, I started thinking, what can I do now?